Audio.
If you enjoy the stories on this podcast, you'll also like the stories in my book, Filmmaking Confidential, which isn't just for filmmakers, but also all artists and really any entrepreneur. Now an Amazon.com and Audible.com bestseller. I just want to say thank you to all of you who ordered it. If you haven't yet picked it up, it's available wherever books are sold in most countries around the world. Order it by visiting Audible or Amazon. To find out more, check out filmmakingconfidential.com and stevebalderson.com. And thank you. I'm Steve Balderson, and you're listening to the Filmmaking Confidential podcast. Each week, we meet with filmmakers, writers, actors, artists, and other notables. Today's guest is actor, filmmaker, Aaron Dean Eisenberg. Eisenberg is best known for portraying Richard Kane in the Ed Burns-directed TV series Public Morals, and the character Todd Lang in HBO series The Deuce, starring James Franco and Maggie Gyllenhaal. Eisenberg embodies his roles effortlessly and with an honest totality.
If I film in rural Illinois or if I'm in New York City, it's totally different. I worked on a show down in New Orleans, and it's like the experience is just informed by the culture and the environment there. Even your work, and in my experience, it's like the work gets sort of infiltrated by it in a cool way.
Completely. How long were you in New Orleans?
So I worked in New Orleans for about 3.5 months. And then I went back down there when my wife graduated. I had just worked on I had done a season of a TV show, and we were sort of waiting around to see if we were getting a second season. And so, I had money and time, and I was kind of burnt out on New York, and she was graduating. So we were like, let's go try somewhere else and see if we like somewhere else more, and somewhere kind of cheaper and more convenient and more chill than New York. And so we picked New Orleans because I had some friends there, I had some community there. So we went there, and we were down there for about a year. And then she got a big job opportunity back in New York. So we ended up in New York anyway, because that's where work was.
Cool.
Yeah.
Were you always a creative person? Were you always interested in performing? Like, how did you come to that place?
Yeah. So, I was always a writer and an artist. So I used to draw a lot, and I wrote like poetry when I was in elementary school onwards. So that was sort of like my natural outlet without any sort of guidance, was in visual art, in drawing, and in writing. And I wrote just mainly, poetry, and I guess what you could call for a little kid, prose. I wrote stories. I didn't get into, I had no interest in the performing arts at all until I was maybe 21 or 22. So I wasn't like, I did no high school theater. I didn't even go to shows. I didn't even know shows were going on. I thought I don't think I knew that theater club existed. And I had a friend who was in shows, but I just didn't give a shit. I had no context or knowledge for the theater at all. To the point that, I grew up in Long Beach, New York. So that's that's an island that's about 50 minutes southeast of Manhattan. For field trips from school, we'd sometimes go to see Broadway plays. And we saw the producers with Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick. We saw Gary Sinise and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We saw some really big bangers with huge fucking people in them. And I went and could not care less. I did not give a shit in high school, dude. Didn't have any affinity for it at all. When I was in college, I was at NYU. I hadn't gone to NYU, but I transferred to NYU because I had to go back to New York because I had some family stuff that was going on. So I sort of went back to New York to help out with family. When I was doing that, I was commuting to the city all the time, and I was also working. So I was working, I had an internship, I was commuting from Long Beach, I was going to school full time, and I was dealing with some really, really heavy family shit at home, on a pretty full-time basis whenever I was home. So I went to the administration at NYU and I said, like, I can't afford it, but I need I need a dorm room or something. Like, I need somewhere to stay. So I was like, I'm basically going to have to, I'm going to have to leave school if I don't have somewhere to stay, because I can't sustain what I'm doing right now. So luckily they were like, yeah, we can hook you up with a dorm room. At the same time, another dude who's now one of my best friends was going through something very similar in North Bergen, New Jersey. So they gave both of us the same dorm room. After I'd gone to them, they sort of thought of him and said he could also use this. Him and I ended up roommates at NYU, and he was an actor. His name's Gio Perez. If you look him up, you'll see he's stopped acting since, but he's an absolutely brilliant actor. I mean, a really, really wonderful actor. And he's this little 5'4" Puerto Rican kid. And he said to me, I'm doing a play. Do you want to come see the play? And I was like, all right, man. Yeah, sure. I'll come see your play. Right. I'm like, what's the play? And he's like, it's called The Bacchae, and I'm playing Dionysus, the son of God. So I was like, all right. Now, you know, I'm thinking in my head for sure. I'm like, I'm going to see like an old classic Greek play about the son of God. I'm like, I'm not going to fucking get this or be into this at all. And I went, and he came on stage, and I was just floored. I was just absolutely, it just shattered me, dude. I was watching him completely be something else and someone else. And I was just like, man, he's just, I don't know. I was just so inspired. It just sort of, like put a little glitch in the matrix, you know. It made me go like, whoa, what is this? I had no familiarity with it at all, but it moved me a lot. Because of that, and because of him, I ended up sort of naturally socializing with a lot of people in film and in the performing arts. And I kept on going to see shows and going to see them work, and even watching them rehearse and all that stuff. And then finally, a bunch of them were like, you're like around all of us all the time. You clearly like are moved by it. You should think about trying it. So I went and I did like an intensive at the Atlantic Acting Conservatory. And it was like a 6-week program. It was like an all day, everyday thing. I was like really dog shit for about 3.5 weeks. But I'm talking about, I know that sounds very short, but you got to understand, it was all we did. It was like all day, every day, pass the fuck out under piano benches in the hallway in between classes from exhaustion. Like, we were constantly acting. And I think a month in, I finally sort of got like a little sense of what the hell it was to do it in any sort of capacity. Like, if you were to, you know, finally look at a picture and be like, oh, that actually looks kind of like a person, or, you know, and there was just no looking back for me. I mean, what the thing about acting is that for me, it was probably the first thing that I knew for certain made value and worth out of a lot of things that like I kept sort of obscure on purpose, and that I thought were negative and sort of shameful, and that I didn't want to face, you know? And it turned all those things, and it made it something that could be inspiring or cathartic for other people. And it gave it value. It healed me. It helped heal me. But I also realized like it was really valuable for other people. And when it took all these things that I thought were shit and made them amazing, it was like, that's when I was hooked. And, you know, I've been doing it ever since, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I have a similar thing with the movies I'm making. I tend to unconsciously work out a lot of stuff in them.
Yeah.
That I'm not even conscious of.
Yeah.
Are you conscious of it when you're doing it?
No. I mean, well, I'm conscious of it in the preparation, for sure. I'm conscious of it in the preparation, but if I'm doing my job right, I feel like there's things that have to happen within the performance that I'm not conscious of until I look back. I think it's kind of problematic if I'm too self-aware and too conscious of something like that, of sort of like what I'm learning, or if I'm healing, or if it's beneficial for other people, or any of that stuff. If that's going on in the middle of the work, in the middle of the performance, for me, that would be a signal that I'm doing something wrong.
Do you watch what you do?
Yeah. I mean, I watch it the first time pretty horribly. like with just lots of judgment and usually frustration. Yeah, it's sort of kind of like disappointment in the work. And even though I know that I do this every single time, I can't stop this pattern. Like I can't even tell myself, hey, stupid, when you watch this again in a few months, like you're not going to think that it's shit. But almost every single time that I watch it the first go around, I'm like, fuck, dude. I just, I don't know. That's how I feel about it usually. Every once in a while, there'll be like a scene where I'm like, oh, I wouldn't do anything different with it. But I think I would say like 75% or more of the work that I do is, if I watch it, I think about what I would do differently with it.
Have you ever deliberately not watched it for like 5 months, 6 months, or a year later?
Oh yeah.
You have?
Sure. Yeah, I've done that.
Do you have the same process?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
I was just curious because, I wonder if, I've never done it. So I wonder if, looking at it, I would even recognize my choices.
Oh,
if it were that long, like it'd be like, how did
funny.
Now if I go back and watch an early movie of mine, I'm like, who the fuck made this? It's like, I have no memory necessarily of being there, or it's like, I'm like, how did I know what I was doing at 21?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's almost like it's like the equivalent of watching like home video. Like, you're just sort of watching like a younger version of yourself and you go like, I don't know who the fuck that was.
Yeah.
That's what previous work kind of feels like usually.
Your first few performances of not just note, but of experience.
The first thing that was like experientially valuable and sort of like a big one for me was we self-produced a play. We did a play called Dealer's Choice, and it's by this guy, Patrick Marber, who's the same guy who wrote Closer, which also became a movie. The play is a British play. The character was not me at all. So there was a lot of work to be done. And, accent work and external work and drunk scenes. And there's card games in the middle of this play. It was a very hard play to do as a first play. It was also the first time that I was like pouring myself into something like wholeheartedly and then exposing it. That was super scary. And because it was really scary, it was really valuable. And, we did okay. We had an okay run. I think we probably, now look, everybody in the theater world will say this about every single performance or every piece that they do, but I do think that it was true in this case. We sort of got the swing of things in the last week of the production. And in that last week, friends who had seen it earlier in the run commented on it also. And they were also sort of commenting on like the growth that I had from first performance to last performance. Yeah, I got a huge kick and a huge high out of that play. So that play also was sort of like the first time that I was like, oh, this could be a professional thing, I guess I'd say. The first thing of note. Okay, so this is tricky. Of note to who? Of note to me, or of note to the general public?
Either.
Okay.
Because even if it's a note that's a notable thing for the general public, half the people haven't heard of it.
That's true, and it's of value to sort of a step in my career, regardless. So, okay. So the first thing that I did of note was I did a co-star. I had like a handful, maybe like I think I had 3 lines or something in Gossip Girl. That was the first very little thing I did. And then I worked on a show called Royal Pains. That was the first guest star that I did. I'd say like the first thing that felt more impactful and like it was going to make a difference for my career was in 2015, I did the show Public Morals, which was a Ed Burns directed show that was on TNT. I think that's the first time that I was like, oh, I could kind of like level up in this field, where I was like, oh, I don't know, I gained more confidence, and I felt like, and I sort of agreed with compliments more from previous things, and sort of, I don't know, just felt like there was way more to go. Then I was like, oh wow, I'm kind of getting the hang of this, and I'm seeing where this can go. Cool. So that was probably the first one. Yeah.
Lead me up to The Deuce and how it came about.
Alexa Fogel, who cast the Deuce, has always, first of all, I don't know if I told you this or if you know this, but I don't have any representation. I have no agent and no manager, and I haven't had that since I think 2014.
I've never had one.
Oh, that's amazing. So, I mean, but the thing about what you do though is that you have much more control over what you do, I think, than most actors do over what they do. So there's definitely I've been lucky, but there's a ceiling to how much I can do on my own. You know what I mean? Because I'm not self-creating. Luckily, I knew Alexa, and man, when I first met Alexa, when I was a rookie actor, young kid, I went in for a BBC America show called Copper, and the thing was super hefty, and she was casting this really meaty part, and I went in, and it was like a really big in my mind and a really big opportunity, and I went in and I started to do the scene, and 2 seconds into the scene, she was like, Aaron, she's like, sit up straight, use your voice. And I was like, okay. And so I restarted, and she was like, great, thanks. And of course I walked out of there and I was like, she fucking hates me. I ruined the opportunity. I'll never, I'll never get back in there. She ended up bringing me back for that show. Ever since then, she's just been like a supporter. And there's certain casting directors that just holler directly. And that's really how I've been working for the last ever so many years, is people just hit me up directly. When she read the role in The Deuce, she thought of me, luckily, and she hit me up. The audition was 2 really small scenes. It's the first scene that you see my character in the first season, and it's a very quick scene in a bar where I just go in, I talk to Paul, to Chris Coy, really briefly, and I walk out. And then the other scene, we didn't end up shooting. And that audition was with just the casting director in a little room in Manhattan and reading just with her. It was these 2 little quick scenes, and they were both really conversational. I think I was wearing a blue t-shirt and jeans. I went in real plain, did the audition, and left and didn't really think about it. It was it felt very much like this. The audition was just having conversation, which, look, is the goal a lot of the time, I think, if you're an actor. So I didn't really think about it. And then I think 4 months later or something, I got an offer on that. And I didn't know how big it was going to be, or, how many episodes or any of that stuff. I did 2 episodes that first season, but the second episode I did was pretty meaty. They gave us a good amount to do. And man, that first post-coital scene in the first season is one of my favorite scenes I think that we've ever done. And it was the first major scene we did together.
Were you aware of the amount of sex that was going to be in it, and what was going to be required of you when you began the process?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I don't know that I knew how much sex there would be, but I knew that the character's sexuality was really important. So I kind of assumed that there would be an ample amount of it. And then as far as how graphic anything could be or any of that stuff, I just didn't care, man. I don't know. I kind of I like things that are unfamiliar or uncomfortable or scare me. I love that shit as an artist. So I always find gold in that stuff. I feel if I'm only doing stuff that's comfortable and in my comfort zone, I don't know, I'm not doing my job as an artist. So I love that shit. I thrive on that stuff. So I didn't think too much about it. I knew a little bit, but I mean, I didn't really care. Cool. I was we talked about no, I don't even think we really had any conversations. They offered it and I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm good.
Filmmaker Aaron Dean Eisenberg. Another great guest on Filmmaking Confidential is legendary director Lloyd Kaufman.
The other countries, Canada and Europe, have a lot more open-mindedness. They encourage their independent filmmakers. You have free speech in the United States as long as you don't say anything.
You can hear my full interview with Lloyd at filmmakingconfidential.com or by subscribing for free to this podcast. We'll be right back with Aaron Dean Eisenberg. Stay with us. I'm Steve Balderson, and this is the Filmmaking Confidential podcast. I'm back with Aaron Dean Eisenberg.
It's interesting. I'm sort of in both wheelhouses also. Like I love that kind of filmmaking, that sort of guerrilla filmmaking. But then like also, you know, I'll watch a Fellini film and it'll fuck me up and I'll be like, well, you know, I want to make 8.5. You know, who knows how much that fucking movie was, but it's just they're opposite ends of the spectrum. They both have a lot of value. You know, I don't love like sort of the middle ground too much, but man, you know, when you watch a film where it's really raw and chaotic, it's amazing. And when you watch a film that is like masterfully orchestrated and you just feel like you're in the hands of greatness, fucking carrying you everywhere they want to, very specifically, it's also amazing.
Right.
You know?
And then then sometimes you don't know, you know, hasn't it been your experience where, I mean, for instance, you know, Kubrick was his own DP for Eyes Wide Shut.
Right.
And for days and days, if not months and months and months, it was just him and Tom and Nicole on set. You know what I mean? And sure, there may have been 20 people in a holding area somewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
But not in the room.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like, you might think, oh, these massive millions and millions. I mean, of course, he got millions and millions because he spent 5,500 years making that movie. But like, you know, there's still the misconception that you couldn't do that or without the millions.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. I'm with you there. I mean, I even wish that I saw more films that were kind of reaching more with less. I feel like totally in line with what you're saying, when you see films that didn't have, quote unquote, enough money, you see a lot of films that are made like very conscious of that fact. You know, you see a lot of movies that are made that it's like they limited what they did based on this theoretical thought that they couldn't do this other thing, so they didn't reach. I wish I was seeing more low budget shit where they're trying to be a little bit more ambitious.
I personally prefer to create with restrictions.
Restrictions and budget?
If you said to me, you can't do XYZ, I immediately try to figure out how to do it within the parameters that I have.
It sounds like that's almost how you're generating some of your ideas.
Right.
That's interesting. Is that how you generate all your ideas?
No, but if I am told, for instance, you can't shoot in the Lantau Island Buddha, I figure out how we can. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Or, you know, this is the limit. These are the edges of the box. This is the limit. And so what can you do inside of that that almost breaks the barrier?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, man, I've only made a couple of little movies myself, and that's the only way that I've made movies so far. You know, that's the only way that I've made movies is with those same restrictions. So I hear you on that for sure.
I mean,
sometimes amazing shit comes out of it, out of those restrictions, shit that you would not have done otherwise.
And you never know, because you might look at the script and there's a helicopter chase scene, let's just say. And so you automatically, well, we can't afford that. That's the first thing people typically say.
Sure, of course.
Instead of, well, how can we? And so, you know, you might find that somebody's Uncle Billy owns a helicopter.
Right.
And Billy just so happens to be free that day and wants to come play for nothing.
Yeah, man.
You never know.
Hey, man. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's a great point.
So I always figure like, or you say, okay, what's the purpose of the helicopter? Is the purpose visually or the visceral speed of it? Is it the height? Is it the what is the purpose that the audience is going to feel? And is there another way to create that? Yeah. Using a different thing.
Yeah, I feel you on that. And that's sometimes what makes really beautiful stuff, for sure, are those restrictions. Yeah, man.
What about producing or filmmaking in general on a project that you're not necessarily in appeals to you?
So first off, I've done a fair amount of producing, but you know, the only reason I think I've ever done it was like to help people, and I really don't like doing it. So I don't really do that too often anymore at all. So for me, like the only thing that I ever liked about producing is that I feel like I'm a communicator, and I like sort of translating the language of different departments to each other. You know, when everybody's sort of on totally different pages and they're fucking all over the place, I feel like I can sort of stand in the middle of that, understand what they're all saying, and sort of re-communicate it so that there's kind of like peace on set. You know what I mean? But besides that aspect of things, I really don't like producing at all. I respect the hell out of it because I don't like it and because I think it's so fucking difficult and stressful. It's really not what I'll say about producing is it's not my nature. I can do it and I can be really great at it. I think I'm a damn good producer, but I fucking hate doing it for the most part. And then directing, I have the opposite relationship with. I really love directing, man. I love actors, you know, like as artists, not necessarily as friends and people all the time, but definitely, and obviously I have some actor friends, but I love all actors as artists. Love connecting with them as a director and communicating with them and finding them. And I feel like I know them and I understand them well. I just love those moments on set where you're just buzzing. I mean, I don't know. That's like, I feel like I'm buzzing from it on set, man, when I'm directing and interacting with actors for a scene that I just think that they're crushing or they're having difficulties. I feel like I get a lot of satisfaction from like the chemical reaction of what comes from an actor and a director. And I get a lot of satisfaction from if an actor is struggling to get somewhere, knowing how to get them out and helping them get out. And then seeing how stoked they are and then how mutually stoked we all are to sort of have found something. And I love the spontaneity of it, man. I mean, you know, I think in a weird way, I'm less in my head as a director than I am as an actor. And so I love that about it. I love sort of doing like a shitload of work at the beginning, like doing all your, you know, your storyboarding or whatever you do, your color palettes and kind of all your shots and everything that you're thinking, the texture of the film, and then doing that enough that I can totally let go of it and kind of just see what the fuck happens when we're actually on set. And I also just love I like the camaraderie, man. Filmmaking is cool to me because it's like, I like creating things with other people. And I'm interested in a lot of it, man. You know, it's like when I direct a film, I'm talking to all the departments because I'm actually interested. Like, I'm not patronizing them and trying to like get them like on my team or something. I'm genuinely interested in what's going on and why each department is doing what they're doing. And I feel like that seems to be not that common, where like all departments feel respected and like honored and like celebrated. And so I like bringing that kind of energy to a set also. And sort of, yeah, man, I like the whole gambit. I really, really love directing.
Cool. When you're doing it, do you focus more on performance over composition or the visuals, or is it pretty even?
I think it's pretty even. I really love cinematography, man. You know, I think that's one of the things where in another life, like I would have taken on that skill set. I really love it. So I think pretty even. It depends. I mean, I haven't made close as many films as you have, so I'm not sure. I don't have so much context yet. So I think when I'm thinking back now on the first film I did, I probably was hyper focused on one of these scenes on the performance, and I learned from that experience that I needed to focus more on some of the other stuff because I missed some coverage that could have really like not saved my film. The film's totally like, there's really cool shit in the film. The moment works, but that could have elevated it. You know, like had I been paying attention to both things, I would have been like, oh, dude, okay, you know, we got this fucking wide. We got this wide already. Like, let's just get over here. Let's get profile. Let's get close. But I was sort of hyper focused on the performance instead of on that one. But I'd be curious to know what happens if the performances are really not going the way that you hope, which has not been my case so far. If that just diverts your attention.
My mentor, who told me about this, it was some scientific study, I want to say in the 30s or 40s, French director, or this experiment. And he put an actor down and he said, okay, just look straight into the camera, emotionless. Don't do anything. Just sit there. Right.
Okay.
You might have heard this as I get into it. And so then what they do is they showed this film complete with edits in it. So it shows the guy sitting there and it cuts to a baby bird. And then it cuts back to the guy, you know, and then it cuts to a baby's birthday party. And then it cuts back to the guy. And then it cuts to an epic war scene, you know, like a shot of like gruesome violence. Then it cuts back to the guy. Then it cuts to, you know, dead animals being run over. Then it cuts back to the guy. It just keeps going and going. And at the end, the audience said, when asked about the actor, they said how amazing it was that he could change his emotions so quickly.
Oh my God. That's hilarious.
And he did nothing.
Oh, that kills me, bro.
Isn't that insane?
That's amazing. Yeah. So
if you think about it from that standpoint a little bit,
then
no matter what's going on set, right, you know, or even in the performance, there is a weird sense of magic that you really can continue to craft that even beyond the set.
Interesting.
Maybe not easy all the time, but
are you editing your films? Or are you handing them over?
Both.
Okay. You do a pass and then you hand it off?
I've done that. I've done that. I've also done it where I had an editor do the first pass.
Gotcha.
And even in once when I was actually shooting, you know, he started so that 4 days after we wrapped, I had a rough cut.
Sick.
Because he had been doing it the whole time, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then dialing it in from there.
I guess my concern is almost always about like the relationship. Like if I have somebody, or I guess it depends. If I'm paying them, it's one thing. If somebody's doing me a favor, it's another. If I'm paying somebody to do a pass and then I don't use it, it's one thing. But if somebody is like trying to do me a solid and they do a pass on it, and then what if I like really don't like it? I don't know how to address that situation.
I have. I mean, I don't know if I've addressed it.
Got
I think I just
you've had those circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Where I've, you know, especially most often in the writing process.
Yeah.
You know, so I send a script to somebody just to do a draft for me.
Yeah.
And they send it back and I'm like, well, I don't like what they did to the sequence. So I just put it right back to what I had.
You know, and then you just move on.
And I just move on. And I don't think about it, whether I'm paying them or not.
Okay. Fair enough.
Tell me briefly. I mean, we're how much time do you have?
I'm chilling, man.
All right. I mean, I don't want to take up all your day, but I wanted to ask you just some general life philosophies that you have incorporated into filmmaking philosophies.
I'm a big proponent of you don't need to be a tortured artist to be a valid artist. So I think that very much informs how I approach the process of making something. You know, I want to enjoy it. I want to have a good time doing it. I care about my time and my life and my present moments more than I care about a result that could or could not be better. A little bit, maybe, who the fuck knows, from having a grueling, fucked up, shitty process. I want to work with like cool people that are talented. I want to work with brilliant, nice, generous, good fucking people with the same kind of priorities for the most part. I would never want to have a bad experience to make something, to make anything. I don't know. So that's a big one for sure.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. And, you know, it's, I don't work 9 to 5,
right?
But almost 8 to 6,
man. That's cool.
Or 9 to 6:30.
Yeah. You're making it a job.
I believe that if people get good rest and they're fed well and they're treated nicely and they enjoy each other, they're more apt to want to come and work for you again.
Totally. Yeah. It has added benefits. Definitely, obviously, it has all sort of ancillary benefits. But like the best one is that like you have fucking compadres that you're making films with, you know? Like you have friends and family and like real bonds and community making a film together. To me, that's awesome. Like I want to make art with community, with an artistic community. And like, that's what to me film can be, for sure.
Is this how or when We Are Film Lab came about for you?
So the Film Lab started when I went to help a friend make a film, and it seemed so stressful and expensive and personally funded. And when we went to look for any kind of help for it and guidance, I just didn't feel like there was any sort of clear direction. You know, there were places you could apply that would get back to you months later and whether or not they could help you. And there was just nowhere that was any sort of like a centralized resource for filmmakers that you could just have immediate access to. And that frustrated me. I started Film Lab because as a nonprofit, to just be like a place where we could sort of build community at first and just have like a bunch of filmmakers. And then it became something where we're picking little films to help out, little films that we thought had big voices. And then the more films we did, the more we started to realize like there were kind of like financial benefits to it. Like one being that, you know, we were doing it often enough at a certain point, and we just started to recognize the discounts that we were getting with vendors were just much bigger than anyone else that we knew that was making films without us was getting. And then, of course, it was like a light bulb. Of course, it's like we're sort of doing what Costco does. You know, they buy all this fucking produce, and because they buy all of it, it's like they get it for way cheaper. And then they extend a part of that discount out to the community at large. I was like, man, nobody's doing anything like this. So we just started extending it all over the fucking place, dude. You know, and we did the same thing with insurance. We did the same thing with gear. Like, and the more we did it, the more it sort of started to run like clockwork. And the more films that came through, the more artists we met, the more crew that we met. Some turned out to be not great, and we, you know, stopped referring them or didn't put them anywhere. And others turned out to be amazing. And all of a sudden it's like, now we're sort of like a vetted filter. I'm 100% by no means an agency at all, but we have the same sort of filter on like a lot of the filmmaking stuff, especially in New York City. We know which insurance companies are going to take advantage of young filmmakers. We know which vendor houses are going to, you know, pad things and then pretend that they're giving you a 30% discount, but it's a 30% off a bullshit price. You know, we know which crew members are a fucking nuisance and so on and so forth. So that's been pretty organically growing for the last 5 years. I almost sold it recently, and that set me down the rabbit hole of learning anything about like the value of the business. I don't know. You know what I mean? That's not why I built this thing. 2 weeks ago, I ultimately decided not to sell it. And then I got this other guy on board who's like a really awesome, smart, generous beast of a businessman who like builds and scales businesses like it's his fucking job all the time. He's going to help me sort of build this and scale it and sort of spread it.
Cool.
So that's kind of where we're at now. We're going to kind of like bring this all over the States.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's rad, dude. I mean, it's literally, and like I said, the more we do it, the better that the benefits get for everybody.
Yeah.
We're just centralizing everything. It's just good for everyone. So it's cool because I'm excited about it because I feel like, oh, there's potentially like a lot of money to be made. And because I think there's a lot of money to be made, it also means that like a lot of projects are also saving a shitload. So it's pretty rad, you know, but the goal is for it to be sort of, I want to hand it off to someone, man. I'm not a business dude, you know, like once we have this built and the infrastructure is right and it like runs without me, I don't want to run a business, man. I want to make films and act and things and make art.
Both you and Steve, and I know Steve feels this way, the ensemble, the family, that you can trust the other person so that there is no wrong. We're going to try something. If it works, we'll try something else. And that's a great way to approach this business because it is such an ensemble.
Yeah, man, I agree. Yeah, it's weird. It's interesting because certain sets can feel like you're like everybody's in their own pod. Yeah. And whenever I'm on a set like that, I'm like, this is not what this is supposed to be. You know, I do my job, but you're looking around going like, huh, this is interesting. Nobody's connected on this set.
Well, then it becomes just a job. It's not the love is being missed.
Yeah, man. Which is like a travesty because it's like it's not an easy job and it's not an easy thing to make a living doing. So it's like, man, if you're then making a living sometimes doing it and it's not enjoyable, that's crazy.
Years ago, I had an old TV tell me, find another job because there's too much. It's too hard if you don't love it. So. Oh
yeah, dude. Yeah, I have one of my best friends is an actor. He's been an actor his whole life, and when he was in high school, he met James Gandolfini, and he had a headshot of James Gandolfini, and he said, "Can you sign this?" And James Gandolfini signed it, but he said to my friend Danny, he said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm going to be an actor." And he's like, "Okay," and he signs it and he hands it to him. And my buddy Danny gets home and he looks at the headshot and it says, "Don't do it, kid. James."
That's so good.
Wild, man.
Yeah,
That's
thank
so
you.
good.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah, man, of course.
Filmmaker Aaron Dean Eisenberg. You can find out more about Film Lab by visiting wearefilmlab.com and by following @Aaron Dean Eisenberg on Instagram. Tune in next time for more Filmmaking Confidential. It is totally free to subscribe, and when you subscribe, you'll get upcoming new episodes automatically, and you'll have free access to all our past shows. The Filmmaking Confidential podcast is a production of Takanga Audio and produced by myself and Ella Spencer. Our theme music is composed by Kevin Robles. For more of the Filmmaking Confidential podcast, head over to filmmakingconfidential.com. If you have a question about filmmaking you'd like answered on the podcast, send me an email using the contact form on the website. To learn more of my filmmaking secrets, be sure to pick up a copy of the book, Filmmaking Confidential, available on Audible, paperback, and ebook, wherever books are sold. I'm Steve Balderson. Thanks for listening and spreading the word. Until next time, keep making, keep doing, keep going.